This summer, Wisden are proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia are leading the way in electrification with their groundbreaking range of EVs, including the EV9, EV6, and the UK Car of the Year, the EV3. Kia also have a commitment to movement that inspires and want to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen every week for Kia's Movement That Inspires moment for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. Maybe, just maybe, the most extraordinary finish in Test cricket's 148-year history. India win by 6 runs in South London, their smallest ever margin of victory on a morning packed full of drama. Mohammed Siraj was the hero for India, Yorker and Gus Atkinson for the win to finish with 5 in the game and 23 in the series, whilst Chris Woakes was the hero for England, walking out to bat with his left arm in a sling. An epic and draining series gets and fittingly epic finale. I'm Yas Rana, and to mull it over with me one last time are Mark Butcher and Phil Walker. Butcher, totally mad finish with Siraj, the hero. It's amazing that Test cricket is still able to conjure up scenarios that feel new and unseen.
Yeah, Siraj was a warrior throughout. I mean, he played all 5 tests, and was just he was towering. I think that's the only way to describe him over the course of the whole thing. Just when you thought there was absolutely no way on earth that he'd be able to have any energy, any strength left, that the hamstrings were going to snap, that his back would crack in half, he's able to come back into the game and turn it and bend it to his will. It was a monstrous performance from him. It really was throughout. And also he was the man that almost dropped the series, wasn't he? That incredible moment. Where he just literally come back onto the pitch after resting from his hour and a half long spell, and he drops Harry Brook. Well, he catches Harry Brook, but had no idea where he was in relation to the rope. And that moment there could very well have been his epitaph. But instead, it was the Yorker. It was the final wicket of an absolutely epic series. And it couldn't have gone, the moment couldn't have gone to a more fitting character over the course of the whole thing. With batting records broken all over the place, centuries being scored on both sides, seemingly at will. He was the one man who had the lot, and it's absolutely fitting that he was the guy that finished the whole thing off.
It was an extraordinary occasion on the last 2 days. I don't know why, but the atmosphere was just different for some reason on the Sunday compared to the first 2 days. And obviously it was amazing this morning. Full house in for an 11 a.m. start. Today just felt so tense. For the first time this summer, I had mates who only have a passing interest in cricket, sending me messages, getting in touch. And it felt like, and totally understandably, a lot of people froze. Jamie Smith's feet looked like they were stuck in the mud. There were buzzers. Us and Raza, who was otherwise brilliant across the games that he umpired, with a bit of a shocker that cost England a leg bye as well. The occasion was just something really quite special.
Well, as ever, as a stories journalist, I know where the story is and I go sniffing it out. I was in a coffee shop in Sawbridgeworth in Hertfordshire with Ravi Bopara. So that's where I was this morning. But we were watching it together over coffee. And we were sitting out the back of the coffee shop, and there were people coming over and asking what the score was and what was happening. And then, as I rushed back to do this show, I was on the train, and England were 8 down, and there was just a crowd of people just round my phone. Now, we are desperately trying to convince ourselves that cricket has relevance, has cut through, and all of that. Well, my little glimpse into the workings of Sawbridgeworth would suggest that cricket is alive and well, because everybody was into it. Everybody was into it. And you talk about the nerves. You know, I try and at least publicly pretend that, you know, I don't really care about the result. This kind of slightly sort of smug postmodern angle. I cared today. I really cared today. And it was a kind of exquisite agony, really, watching it. At no point so I tuned in properly just as Overton got out, right? So I don't know how you two felt, but I didn't think at any stage England had a sniff after that. I just thought it was a bit too much. It was a bit too much, and that the propulsive Indian pace attack were always going to deliver it in the end once Overton went. I thought it was 50.
That was an interesting decision, by the way. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Talk about, I mean, Kumar, you mentioned that Raza there with his extraordinary finger raising, but Kumar Dharmasena took an age to decide whether or not to give that out. And of course, that would have been one of the great controversial moments, wouldn't it? Because either way, neither side was going to be happy with the outcome of that. We'd have had Sonny G and the rest of cricketing watching fans from the subcontinent claiming that there was something wrong with DRS had it gone the other way. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to have put his finger up for that, because I just thought it was unbelievably tight, as DRS finally proved. And that could have been one of those moments that caused a bit of heartache. But you're right. As soon as Overton was gone, it looked very, very difficult. But sorry, I had to interject there, because I thought, what did it hit by? It was like an absolute whisker. How he put his finger up for that, knowing that both teams had reviews there, I will never know, because you're not giving that out. I don't think pre-DRS day. So it was an incredible call.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the comments already after that one. A classic thing in sport, you construct a narrative based on the end result, and the margins were so fine. Part of what's made this series so watchable is just, actually, these are two quite flawed teams. And there were some things that India did today that to me felt like they made no sense, when they had no one in off the last ball of what turned out to be the penultimate over, when England needed 8 runs to win. They give Atkinson the single, and we'll get to Oakes in a second, but they give Atkinson the single. So Atkinson retains a strike, England needing 7 to win. A 6, which Atkinson had already done, would have tied the game at the very least, which would have given England the series. And India just gave that to India. And I thought India worked really well as a team first up when they had more conventional fields. But when they went to the field spread to Atkinson, it suddenly felt like Gill was doing the job by himself. Whereas before it seemed like a real constructive effort involving Rahul, Jadeja, etc. in particular.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that he got a single off that last ball. I mean, Wokes, he could barely run. I mean, the running was utter agony for him. So had he faced a single delivery, the outcome was pretty much foregone. But it worked out all right in the end. Maybe, but I couldn't work it out. I was standing there in front. I'm pacing the room at this point, and I cannot believe that he's given him what maybe the call to Prasid was to get it up over his head or bowl it wide or something, and that Prasid basically just bowled the wrong ball, because one straight at the stumps where he could just nudge it to mid-on for a single was surely not the plan. But it didn't matter. That didn't matter. I mean, that kind of summed up the entire series. Something completely balmy that makes no sense ends up working out perfectly for you, and that happened from Test match 1 right the way to the end.
Yeah, worth mentioning just the drop catches as well, how much that hurt England. 6 drop catches in the India second innings. Butch, I'm going to do something we've never done on the podcast before. I'm going to steal a question from your wife. So she asked you this morning, how should one go about a nervy run chase like this? How would you have done it? And what do you make of how England went about things? Not just this morning, but also yesterday evening. There were 301 for 3, and when Brooke was batting with Root, it looked like England were going to walk it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So this goes back to what Phil was saying about people who are not normally interested in what goes on in the game. My wife's standing there doing the ironing. We got the TV on, and she goes, "So what do you do? How do you cope with this situation at the back end of the game?" And my answer to her was, "Well, you forget, completely ignore how many runs are left. You've got all the time in the world. That the amount of runs left do not matter. You play in a manner whereby you give the opposition no hope that they're going to win the game." And then, of course, England proceeded to come out and swing at every single ball that came down, giving India as much hope as they ever wanted. So, look, I think everybody would have been a little bit shocked by the atmosphere at the ground today. I mean, in it being full, the noise coming from both sets of fans, a lot of Indian fans there, but a lot of English fans there as well. And it felt a little bit like a sort of penalty shootout type scenario. And under those circumstances, you need gnarled and grizzled old heads at the crease who are going to block all that out and just get on with doing the job. England's best hope or biggest hope would have been Jamie Smith. He's played superbly. He's a fantastic young player, but he looked a bit like a rabbit in the headlights for the first time in his Test match career. And for me, his job ought to have been, no matter what happens, you make sure that you're there. We don't need you running down the wicket and trying to smash the thing out of the park. The others can do that. You're the last recognised batter. Your job is to make sure you pull up the stumps and shake hands with people at the end of it. But that, that's not how it worked out, and that's not how it was seen, and it all added to the drama. But England losing, not winning the Test match, I should say, England not winning the Test match probably goes back to the night before, where you had a very similar scenario in Root and Brooke, who have removed all hope from India whatsoever. They were absolutely dead and buried. I was there all day yesterday, and they just looked done, energyless, idealess, and that's because of the brilliance of the two guys playing. And at that point, the job of both of those guys, you just see at home. You give them no hope. But of course, Harry was going, and he played an extraordinary swipe. Lost his bat, lost his wicket, and somehow that fed all of the energy that India needed back into their legs and into the bowlers to have one last crack at it. And boy, did they have one last crack.
Phil, how do you see it? Brooke, 91 ball, 100, his best innings at home, probably, in a home Test match. Root, his third 100 on the trot, but they didn't get England over the line. The Brooke dismissal in particular attracted a lot of attention yesterday, but is it one where you say, well, that's basically how he has his success as well? The guy averages nearly 60 in Test cricket, scoring quicker than anyone has ever scored. Or do you think that he's better than moments like that because he had actually shown range in that innings? He started a million miles per hour, and then the afternoon session yesterday, England basically turned it into the middle overs of an ODI. Field was out, going at 4 or 5 singles and over, didn't really take any risks. And then at that point, as England approached the finish line, he took a risk he hadn't done for a while. What do you think?
I think all of that can be true. I think to attempt to try and clip his wings is to remove the essence of his brilliance. His style gets him to this point, and the numbers are stratospheric. The numbers are mad. So one can't start questioning the fundamental approach that he takes, because he averages a tick below Wally Hammond and a tick ahead of Jack Hobbs, and he's the fastest scoring England batsman in history. So that's where he stands. Of players who have only had one or none not outs, he averages 10 better than the next best on the list, which is Seymour Nurse. So his numbers are all time at the moment. And his numbers are a consequence of the way that he plays. However, if we're talking about where we want him to finish up, and you've got to bear in mind he's 30 Test matches into his career. Our learned friend, Mr. Butcher over there, said, well, he only started really getting a grasp of Test cricket after about 40-odd games. So by some metric, Harry Brooks still just kind of finding his way, really, as a Test match batsman, mad as that is to say. He's only been a player for 2 or 3 years. And he's only played a dozen or so home Test matches where his record is good, but it's not elite. It's not yet elite. He's made 2 home hundreds. This innings was perhaps his most complete for what he did from the point at which Siraj dropped him to the ball before he smashed one up in the air. But his interview today on the telly was very telling. And he was as glum and as flat as you've ever seen him. And when Atherton asked him, how do you think you've gone? He said, I've gone all right. And you could hear the disappointment in his voice. And he said, and he's not given to, big words, hyperbole, but he said he's devastated. He's devastated by the shot that he played. So I think it's legitimate to say in that moment, sense where the game is. And he said, well, 2 or 3 more overs of us playing like this and trying to smash the cover off it, and the game's done. And there is some logic to that, sure. But 3 or 4 overs of playing sensible
the way they had done.
He's strummed it along the floor for an hour and a half. The 2 shots he'd played before he got out were both perfect cricket shots. An extra cover drive all along the floor and a front foot pull through straight mid-wicket. Now, sure, he's a human being and his beans are going. All of that. But if we're talking about where Harry Brooks sits in the pantheon, then this will hurt him, and it does chip away a little bit at his position. Just a tiny bit, but it does, I think. I think that can be a legitimate point to make. I wouldn't call it criticism. It's more of an observation. But the best person to ask is him. And he, you hope, will, take a little bit from that moment, because that game was in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And he let his brilliance overtake him. What do you think, Mark?
No, I completely agree. I mean, and the fact that he knows it, he knows it too.
That's the key, isn't
it? The game, and it goes back to that idea about run chases, about sort of being there at the end. You kind of the opposition can't win if you're still there. There was no time. We're not playing a 20 over game. There's no time pressure. Two overs of smashing it is no different from 10 overs of knocking it around the way they had done. The result still ends up the same. You win. So yeah, he will. I doubt he will ever find himself in that position and do something similar. Which is not to say you don't get knocked over by a brilliant ball, but India were dead. I think that is the main point. You kind of sense that the opposition are down and out, and the only thing that's going to revive them is you doing something daft. And there it was.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with his general approach to a test match innings, especially under pressure and especially on tricky tracks when he takes gambles in the first 20 balls.
That's the point, I suppose, because you're not doing, what none of us are doing is criticising the way that he got England into that position, at least not for the part before lunch. Because when the total is miles away and the opposition is massively on top of you, you kind of need to change the momentum in some way. Now, not everybody would do it that way. I mean, Harry Brook is so brilliant that he can do it in a way that most people would balk at. But then things change, don't they? That's the beauty of long form cricket. The momentum is completely with you at that point, and so the risk taking not necessary. None of that stuff is required anymore, other than just when you get the ball to knock away in the style that only he possesses, then do that. But for the rest of the time, you make sure the opposition doesn't get a look in through the crack in the door. But England still should have won it from there. I mean, when he walked off, what did we need? 70 or something?
Yeah, 73.
So you kind of hope he's walking off at that moment thinking, you daft bugger. However, we've still got this. Joe's at the crease. We've got players who can play coming up behind him. But of course, India have had other ideas at that point. The fear had gone because the worry for them was always that Brook is impossible to contain. And then when you suddenly get a new batter at the crease, and Roots just going along nicely, but he's not hurting you, with big overs or anything like that. Which, to be fair, neither was Harry Brook at that point. Then suddenly you've got one last effort, haven't you? You just lay it all on the line at the new guys, and what happens happens.
Yeah, at the end, it's a massive shame for England because I think they've had two successful chases between 370 and 380 against India. This would have been the best of the lot for me. Winning this game with 10 men for the final 4 days, and this was a much spicier pitch than what we saw at Headingley at the start of the series, but also at Edgbaston 3 years ago as well. I mean, at the end, part of what wins it for India is just how much movement they were able to get through the air with that old ball, to the extent where they don't take the second new ball. And there seemed to be a tactical decision to target Root's pad and just get the ball to really swing in. And then from that moment, there's an extraordinary passage of play where in the hour after tea, England scored 22 runs and lost 2 wickets. 13 of those runs were off the bat. There were the 5 wides that Akash Deep sent down early on, and then there were 4 leg byes. England just did not look like they were able to score at all in that period. Phil, on England being down to 10 men, it was a stirring sight in some ways seeing Chris Woakes come out to bat today, received a standing ovation as soon as people saw that he was coming out, clearly going to bat left-handed if he faced anything, and also he was coming out in a sling. But should he have been allowed to bat? We've had 2 games on the trot where a player has endured a serious injury early in the game, and one of the teams has effectively played with 10. Should we have injury subs for obvious external injuries? Ben Stokes actually asked about this after the game, said he is still very much against them, because he said if you had injury subs, he, who was ruled out of this game through injury, would have played knowing that there was cover.
To me, it doesn't sit right that you effectively play a 5-day game with only 10 men. It no longer sits right to me, and I think it can be policed effectively enough, and so you don't you put certain sort of checks and balances in place so teams don't take the piss. Personally, that feels like a fairer way of doing it now in the ultra professional era. And it's a little bit dry to say that. And I can understand the argument that the vagaries and, eccentricities of Test cricket are such that sometimes that's how it goes and that there's a beauty in that. I can understand that argument. But I think we've got to the point now where these games, these high profile games, they are so heavy, they are so significant, and it makes a slight mockery of it. I think it certainly undermines the integrity of the competition when you're playing 10v11 for the best part of a week. And it's what you had with the pant injury, and it's what you've had here. Flogging yourself with 3 seamers because your main new ball bowler is in a sling when you have people on the bench. Personally, it's a little bit of a dry opinion, but my feeling is that they should find a way to bring about legitimate external injury subs. Michael Vaughan spoke about perhaps limiting it to the first innings. I think there's some value in that. I think that's quite an interesting idea. I can see the cons against it, but I think overall, I want to be able to look at a test match and a test series and feel like every single marginal has been accounted for. And
that is very dry of you. I cannot believe that's coming out of your mouth.
I know, and I know you want me to say, "Come on, this part of the beauty of the game, get on with it."
No. It's got nothing to do with the beauty of the game. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It's to do with the cruelty of the game. That's why cricket's like life. It's not fair, and unfortunately, I'm very happy with it the way that it's always been, and I'm happy to see it continue like that. It's just bad luck. And if players have to come out, I said before this test match started, obviously I wasn't working on the game. So I was doing hospitality around the Oval. So I got asked a lot of questions. And one of them was around Chris Woakes. And I said, this might actually be, whatever happens, this might be his last test. And so, nothing official. He hasn't retired and all that kind of stuff. But even before he did the shoulder injury, you could see a scenario whereby England didn't take him to Australia, and therefore that was the last thing. And so, if his last moment as an England cricketer is him walking down the steps with his arm in a sling, trying somehow to get England to 6 or 7 runs, then what an awesome way to go out. There were so many emotional moments over the course of the Test match. I'm changing subject slightly, but it all ties into the same thing. Nathan Lyon hobbling out to scrape a few runs together in the Ashes Test match at Lords a couple of years ago. Malcolm Marshall batting with one hand against England all the way back in 1984. These are all moments that are kind of etched into the folklore of Test match cricket. And it's unfortunate people get injured, but I guarantee, even with checks, we've seen what checks and balances have been able to do in the United States. Absolutely bugger all. So even with them. Even with checks and balances, with the best will in the world, people will find a way of engineering themselves around them to turn the thing to their advantage. And unfortunately, injuries are part of the game, and it's just bad luck. Life's cruel, my friend.
Could I ask then, are you anti-concussion subs?
No, but that's because that's a completely different thing. Because a player under the concussion rules, a player could feel like they're perfectly happy and fine to continue, but they are medically told that they cannot. So that decision is taken completely out of the players and the team's hands. So that's why that has come in, and that is why that has got nothing to do with an injury replacement. Completely different.
I don't think that there's a notion of difference. I think
there is of course there is, because if I get donked on the head, right, and I can't remember my birthday. But I'm quite happy to go out there and bat again. They will tell me I can't.
Sure.
Right?
So
in this instance, the decision is up to the medical team and to Chris Woakes with his arm in a sling as to whether he wants to go back out there again. And if he says yes, I do, there is nothing stopping him. But with a concussion protocol, you can't do it even if you want to. So that's why the two things are completely different.
I think we should move on.
Completely different.
I think we should move on. But
I think it's a good route, but I'm sorry, the two things are not the same. They're really not, because I can make a decision with a broken thumb or a broken foot that I'm still going to go out there and take part in the game. But if you get hit on the head, you can't. There's nothing. It doesn't matter whether I want to or not. You are not allowed to. Hence, you have a concussion sub.
But you mentioned what I think. I want to move on. There's so many other things to talk about.
Fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's do it.
But you mentioned there are a few emotional moments in the game. One of them was Chris Woakes on that first day going down, and as you say, I think a lot of people sense that might be the last time we see him in an England shirt. But also Joe Root, when he brings up his 39th Test 100, his third on the bounce, a truly beautiful moment, taking out the sweatband, Thorpe sweatband that we saw loads of people in the crowd wearing across the Test match, raising it up, and Graham Thorpe was Root's mentor for a long, long time, both in his younger days, but also when he was at his absolute peak a few years ago. And then you also had a really beautiful moment in Nasser Hussain, one of Thorpe's great mates, calling the moment perfectly on commentary. I think Surrey and the ECB deserve a lot of credit for how they handled this week. I think it was a really special occasion across the 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it. I actually saw it for the first time this morning, the tribute. I was in the ground, but I didn't see. So, and somehow I hadn't heard that Rooty had done that. So I saw it on the highlights this morning, and kind of sat there at 6:30 in the morning with a coffee in my pants, and just went. So it was beautiful. It was really, really lovely, and extremely fitting. And he could potentially get into a bit of bother for that, because the players weren't officially allowed to wear those headbands on the field, because they've got obviously name of charity and whatever on them, and you're not allowed to wear things with slogans. Remember Moeen Ali getting into strife for his T-shirt a little while back. I hope that won't happen. I'm pretty sure it won't. But it was a brilliant thing to do, and a wonderful, wonderful moment to go along with plenty of others over the course of the last 6-7 weeks.
Phil, just on Siraj again, do we undervalue durability? He was the last man standing, the only quick to play a full part in all 5 Test matches, and he bowled loads, but it wasn't historically unusual. I was doing some research in terms of how much shorter are 5 Test series in England now compared to 20 years ago. And since 2009 to now, they have basically been the same. So this series is 45 days long. The shortest series is India and England in 2018, which is 41 days long. The longest it's been since 2009 is 47 days. So it's not actually unusually short, even though a lot of people are writing that it's the hundreds fault, blah, blah, blah. Stuart Broad, 2 years ago, age 37, bowled more overs in a 5 Test series that was exactly the same length of time as Siraj did. Age 37, there wasn't that much chat about, Broad needs to be rested, etc. It feels like bowlers are less durable at the moment. So if you are able to bowl and maintain intensity across the series, that is gold dust. Siraj bowled 2 pivotal 8-over spells. There's one that he bowled on the second afternoon where he takes 3 wickets in a spell, including Yorking Bethel in his 7th over. He had an amazing over to Ben Duckett on the 4th day, where the last delivery was 89 miles per hour. He beats the outside edge 5 times in 6 balls. And then on the final day, his 5th quickest ball of the series, 89 mph, was the very last ball he bowled in the series. He's obviously a really skillful bowler, and I think doesn't get enough credit when people say, he's lion-hearted, etc. There's a lot of skill there as well. But one attribute that probably he doesn't get enough credit for is he's just bloody there all the time.
Well, certainly, finally now people will give him the credit, the dues that have been not really recognised over the years. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine back in 2021, and him saying, it's a bit of an uneven Indian attack. I said, yeah, but Siraj is a class bowler. He said, nah, he's all heart and whatnot. He's so much more than that. Always has been so much more than that. And what we've seen, as much as the stamina, the longevity, the spirit, the ability to dig deep and keep going, which is precious, no doubt. But just skills-wise, he's been outstanding. The wobble seam that he's got, the in-swinging Yorker that he's got, the break back in ducker into the pads that he's got. He's rarely out of rhythm now, and perhaps that was an accusation against him earlier on in his career, that he was a bit of a daisy kind of bowler. Some days he does, some days he doesn't. It's not been like that this summer. And as other bowlers have fallen away, stamina-wise, he's gone the other way. Bumrah went for 100 and more at Old Trafford and looked down on pace, and that was only his 3rd game in 4, obviously, and infamously wasn't here at the Oval. Jofra, albeit he's coming back and all of that, but again, down on pace in that 2nd game. And you saw it with certain England seamers as well, that their race was run. at certain points across the series. None of that with Mo Siraj. He is lovable, but that's almost a sort of damning with faint praise. He's also a top class fast bowler. And when the dust settles on this series and we try and put it in place as is fun to do on 4 feather beds and one sporting pitch, for him to take 23, 24 wickets?
23 wickets.
23 wickets. That is extraordinary, right? And you will have bowlers who have slightly better figures, but in England historically, but who have had pitches to work on. When you consider what he's done, it's not over the top or recency bias to put it near the top of that list of all-time great, certainly 21st century fast bowling performances. It's that good.
I just thought all test match, I just thought England would murder for a bowler like Siraj.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, look, one of the things about and I'm glad you brought that up about the amount of days that the series has taken, because there were actually long gaps. There were 2 long gaps, weren't there, and then 2 sets of back-to-back test matches, and that kind of felt in modern terms as about as fair as you might get for a 5-match series anywhere. The issue that blights sort of fast bowlers more often than not is back in the old days. We go all the way back to sort of when I started being a professional cricketer, where our English bowlers were flogged to death in county cricket, then flogged in test matches, and then in between test matches we go back and flog themselves in county games again. So that was not ideal, right? Then you go to a situation where bowlers are only playing test matches and playing very little first-class cricket, which is better than the previous model mentioned, but still is not ideal. And what you have at the moment is a situation whereby bowlers simply do not have the hardness in their bodies in order to be able to withstand bowling 5 test matches in a row with or without breaks, blah, 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 because what you don't want them is been flogged and tired when they start, but what you do need them to have is some sort of running in them that means that they are more durable to be able to get through maybe say 4 out of the 5. 5 out of 5 nowadays, you're lucky to get that out of anybody, which makes Siraj's performance all the more extraordinary. But there is a balancing act to be had between sort of resting, getting overs in your legs. Broady said that about his own bowling. He played plenty for Nottinghamshire the year that he played the 5 test matches in the Ashes, and he was ready. He was hardened and he was ready. He got enough work in him that he knew that he was able to be durable and to get through matches, but not so much that he was able to still perform at his absolute peak when the situation arose. And that goes for bowlers across the board. India turned up here with guys who'd only bowled a handful of overs and been playing T20 cricket. Jofra, obviously, you mentioned, has only bowled 18 overs in red ball cricket. He was never going to be able to play more than those 2 games on the bounce. No way, it's just not possible. And so there's an issue there around workloads, and often the workload is always about it being too heavy, but it can certainly be too light as well.
Yeah, and sorry, Yaz, and just on that, there have been certain England selection decisions made across the summer that if they had their time again, they might revisit it. Playing Jofra back to back, knowing that they were going to get a bit more life in the oval track, is probably a mistake in hindsight, but it felt like it at the time as well, especially after the intensity of Lords and playing on day 5. And Jacob Bethel facing 210 deliveries all summer, going into a test match, hiding to nothing. So, one or 2 decisions, if they could have their time again, England, I think they might have really looked at it again.
Just before we do more on that, there's a quick announcement. We've got a live show coming up, an end of summer live show, slightly smaller than the ones we've done before. It's going to be in central London at some point in late September. Dates and tickets to be released later this week. Patreon members get early access and discounts. So if you're a gold member, you get a full discount and earliest access. A silver member gets a 75% discount and earlier access, and bronze 50% and early access. Should be good fun as always. We've got a question from Michael on the themes that we were just talking about. Do England need to be questions on the selection rotation of fast bowlers going in with guys who are undercooked in the final test match, and then also Jacob Bethel had no batting. Atkinson was brilliant, by the way. We should mention that amazing fifer. England were poor on that first day, but Atkinson was the one who really stood up to be counted. Tongue was almost comically wayward in the first innings, but still able to produce the odd magic ball and was much better in the second innings. He finished with 8 in the game. But then Jamie Overton, he had just bowled 40 overs in first-class cricket since April 2024. He bowled 38 overs in this game alone. And then Phil, as you say, Jacob Bethel, burst onto the scene. New Zealand looks ready-made as a test number 3. But he's barely played cricket this summer. He's been fit. And since June the 10th, he scored 69 runs, missing 3 championship games for Warwickshire, predominantly to wear a bib.
What do you say? I mean, it is ridiculous. The clue is in the name, professional cricketer. And so you need to be playing some cricket. I honestly, it's difficult to say anything other than kind of nod your head along with what you're saying and saying that is patently ridiculous. What England were left with in terms of the guys who were left standing to pick in the Oval Test match is what they were left with. But I don't know that planning wise, you couldn't plan for Stokes being injured, although I suppose that in the history of things that the likelihood was that he might be. And so the Bethel not playing, going back and getting any sort of cricket for Warwickshire during the 3 test matches that he was 12th man was bad. I mean, no matter whether or not he ended up back in the side for the last test or not, the guy is a young fella, and he should be playing every given occasion that he's available to play. And learning how to do it and getting the miles and the experience, the air miles into his brain and into his body as to what being a professional batsman is. I'm not blaming anybody for it, but it's just the modern game seems to be based increasingly more around not playing than playing. And unless you unless you are sort of somebody like Mark Wood, who obviously patently needs to be wrapped up in cotton wool for the occasions when you need him the most, i.e. the Ashes coming up, then I can't really see any reason why other guys, unless they're injured, are not playing more than they do. And I'm really sure that there's anything more to be said on that.
Phil, do you think England missed a trick in personnel? I don't really understand. I think he actually had a better test match than people said he did. But I don't really understand how Jamie Overton's jumped to the front of the queue here. He wasn't on the scene for a couple of years, maybe in the odd squad, but Matt Potts is someone who has played a lot under this regime, done pretty well at averages under 30 with the ball, can hold a bat, he's got a first class 100. The last test match he played, he went pretty well on a flat pitch in New Zealand, took I think 4 top 7 wickets with the older ball. England haven't fancied him at all this summer, and then they also had one look at Sam Cook, who played on a really flat pitch and, to be fair, didn't turn up any trees in the Zimbabwe game, but they had one look at him and thought, nah, we're done. And on a pitch with a bit of life, a bit of assistance, they didn't quite have the skills and the relentlessness that the conditions really call for.
I'd have probably played one of those two, for what it's worth. I thought Jamie Overton was really unlucky, actually. In the second innings in particular, he looked undercooked in the first. But in the second innings, he bowled some good deliveries, quite sharp as well. Got a bit unlucky, bowled a beauty to get one of the lower order batters out. I forget who it was.
He got Jarrell just before the second new ball, right, with one that really swung.
Like a way cutter, really. Pitch middle, hit off stump, or hit the pad in front of off stump. I thought he gave a decent account of himself, really. You can't accuse them of being inconsistent. These are the cricketers that they like. They like cricketers that are snarly and that can bowl fast and can bang it in, and they might go for a few. Perhaps what happened at times in that second innings is that they ran out of guile. And with no spinner and no Wokes, it was basically 3 blokes being flogged to within an inch of their lives. And with a more conventional medium fast seamer in those conditions, it may have played out better for them. But I don't know. I think overall, I could understand why they picked that team. And I think if Wokes had been fit, and tough luck, as we say, I think if Wokes had been fit, hold on, my wife's calling. Hold on a minute. No.
What does she think? Who does she think should have played?
She was slightly less interested than your wife, Mark, in the game, actually.
Which is quite low on the interest scale.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Across the course of the 5 test matches, I think they got some selections wrong for sure. But I can understand why they didn't pick a spinner at the Oval. And as we saw, India's didn't work either. So you can argue the toss on that. And Overton, I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if he ends up on that Ashes tour, because they do like him. They do like him. For better or worse, they do like him.
Yeah, I think he will be on that plane. I think he bowled a lot better than people said he did. I think it was more just the overall makeup of that attack, maybe for the Oval. But again, you don't know that your opening bowler is going to go down on the first day, and it looks very, very different if Wokes is fit throughout the Test match. Moving on, this summer Kia want to help you and your family get closer to the action and create inspiring memories that will last a lifetime. On September 20th, they're giving back to young cricket fans and offering 11 to 14-year-olds the chance to train at the iconic Kia Oval with some of the top coaches from Surrey before playing a tournament on the pitch itself. For all the details for that event, head to the link in the description. Taking a step back, bigger picture, how big a result is this for Gill and Gambia? They look dead and buried at lunch on Saturday in Manchester, and now the under-fire coach and new captain have a series result of real substance. You know, if you compare this result for India compared to England haven't beaten India or Australia home or away for 7 years now. They haven't come close to drawing a series away from home. So for India to get this when they're in transition is quite a big deal.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it was a fabulous performance from them throughout, really. Sean of Bumrah for 2 out of the 5 test matches, the 2 games that they win. Jaswal's not played in England before, 400 on odd runs. KL Rahul, top of the order, looked just sublime. I've already waxed lyrical about him, so I won't bore people with that again. Gill as captain and number 4, both jobs he was brand new to, was about as good as you can possibly get. Jadeja was a warrior. I mean, didn't get much out of him with the ball, but my goodness, without him with the bat, things would have looked very different, I think, in terms of the scoreline. Siraj, we've already mentioned, for Akash Deep to come in and win a test match, taking 10 out of seemingly nowhere, it was extraordinary. They got some incredible performances out of most of the people, most of the players that they used throughout the whole thing. And in 2 incredible circumstances, really. I mean, they were. You could say they were unlucky to lose the first one in Leeds. They played brilliantly to bounce back at Edgbaston. At Lords, I think was perhaps England's best overall game, to be honest with you, because I couldn't see a situation where they were losing that game, even though India only needed 190 in the end of that Test match. So we'll give that one almost entirely to England, although it wasn't without its highlights from India's point of view. And then Old Trafford, none for 2, save the match, save the series, and then pull this one out of the fire. So there's character, there's guts, there's a hell of a lot of skill. I mean, like frightening levels of skill, particularly on the batting front. And a real sort of patriotic fervour in representing England at cricket, because teams that didn't have that sort of inner strength and that inner quality to want to slug it out and fight would not have ended up drawing that series, I don't think. You have to give another big hats off and a wave and kudos to the Indian support. I mean, you take it for granted, of course, that a cricket mad nation with an enormous amount of representation over here in England are going to be well supported. But my goodness, they stuck by. Even yesterday, they were starting. They went a little bit quiet for the first time in the entire game. But as soon as they were given a sniff, they were right back at it again, and as fervent as any sort of England support at a game at Wembley against Germany or something. I mean, it was that sort of level, and that must have given them a huge lift too. But it was a massively impressive performance from them, and 2-2 will feel like a win to them. 2-2 for England is kind of like, well, there's 2 things. It's you're either very, very worried about going on an Ashes trip, having not been able to win at home, and regardless of what you say about the pitches, it's home conditions. You're at home. and you've not been able to beat India, given their sort of relative lack of experience over here. So it's either a real worry about going down to Australia, or it's a bit of a wake-up call that things still need refining, and um, they still need to be more ruthless at particular times. There are certain errors in terms of either judgment or just plain old catching, if you want to take it down to that need to be wiped out, and that you don't go down to the Ashes sort of gung ho in terms of patting yourself on the back and how good are we, which perhaps could have happened had you won 3-1, and sort of go, okay, well the bolts need tightening up still further. They've been tightened up a bit for this series, but they need tightening up still further. And I do think that when it comes to the they might pick 18. I would suggest they do pick 18 to go down to Australia. That they're actually going to be in a damn sight better shape fast bowling stocks wise than they have been this summer, which might sound a little bit strange given the way that we ended up at the Oval. But I actually think when it comes down to it, fast bowling stocks are going to look pretty healthy by the time we get to sort of October, as opposed to how they look right now. And Carson, Tongue ended up with, 21 wickets or something. Having somebody that can knock over 9-10, do not underestimate the value of having somebody who can knock over 8-9-10 Jack in a 4-man bowling attack. Cast looked the real deal at times. A little bit more refinement for him. Archer will be back. Wood, you would hope, will be back. The interesting thing is going to be what happens with the new ball. Atkinson looked fantastic. So England are going to have a lot of fast bowling stocks. People might be thinking, "Oh my God, we're doomed. We got none." But by the time we get around to October, November, England are going to have a full roster of their favoured fast bowling options to take on that trip, and so things will look perhaps better than they did at the beginning of this series, at the beginning of the Ashes, than they did at the beginning of this one.
Phil, how big a deal do you think it is that England have been so short of their best? Seems that Mark Wood doesn't play a single game this series. Gus Atkinson plays 1 test. Jofra Archer plays 2. Ben Stokes misses the final test. That is probably England's first choice attack, and they never took the park at any one point. And the three specialist guys who you think will start the Ashes if fit, they play 3 tests between them. That is a big deal.
Yeah, and it played a part for sure. You just had to look at the way Atkinson bowled. Huge loss that he wasn't available for 80% of the series. I tend to agree with Mark on this. I think England have actually organised their larger squad pretty effectively. They have a bunch now of sort of 17, 18, and you can basically write them down now. And come September, when they do announce the squad for the Ashes, you kind of know what it's going to be, right? There might be 1 or 2 surprises, but it might be like a Jordan Cox second wicketkeeper, mild surprise, but you can basically pick that squad now. And that's because they've identified the quicks that they need. They've managed Jofra's return pretty well overall. They're hoping, fingers and toes crossed, that Mark Wood can come through some games. It's worth pointing out he played 4 of the last 5 test matches down there. I think they've done it okay, actually. And having discussed ad nauseum England test teams going down to Australia and lying through your teeth, pretending that there's going to be a chance when you know that there isn't. I think there is undoubtedly a chance this time round. I really do. And they are dangerous. And you only have to listen to the way that the Aussie overlords are carrying on to recognise that they are a bit rattled by what they see. 2-2, by the way, just going back to that original point, it would have been a cosmic scandal if India had not taken something from this test series the way that they played.
Yeah.
It would have been totally unjust.
Well, I was talking to my Wisden India colleague Abhishek Mukherjee, and he's thrilled that India won it. But he says drew the series. He's adamant that India should have won it. We talked about the drop catches from England, but India dropped 5 or 6 catches at Headingley, and that lets England off the hook massively. Brooke no ball at the end of what was that, day 2 or day 3 in the series, massive moment. So India will feel like they could have easily won this series 2-1. This series could actually very easily have been 4-1 either way, almost.
Yeah.
Which is the sign of a good series.
Well, no, 3-1 either way,
yes.
I guess, because
yes,
Yeah.
Could I just add? I think the teams have delivered perhaps the most complete home series since '05 that we've seen in England. This Test match just gone is the greatest Test match in England, I think, since Headingley, since Edgbaston '05, and I think it will go right into the top bracket. I think my one point of irritation has been the way that the media have amplified a lot of bollocks, a lot of rubbish, and created elements of spite and nastiness where there hasn't been any. And the players, sure, there's been an intensity to the way that they've played, and there's been the odd standoff, as you'd expect, 5 Test matches in 40 odd days. But it's the noise around it that's irritated me. The noise around the build up to this game I thought was ugly, unedifying. The stuff around the groundsman, ramped up by elements of the press on both sides, was rubbish. And we've seen throughout, for me, there's a sort of there's a dissonance, cognitive dissonance between what I'm really watching and the mutual respect that clearly exists between these two teams, and the sort of scurrilous rubbish that swirls around it. And I know these are the times we live in and all of that, and we're probably perpetuating it now. But that's irritated me, and it irritated me in the build up to the game. It irritated me in the aftermath of Lords and so on, because you've only got to see the way they were with each other afterwards to realise that all the rest of it's just nonsense, really. And that these two teams have put up an extraordinary show, and the press and the wider media, they need to celebrate that, not try and chip away at people, because it's not good look.
Speaking of the press, briefly, just on Groundsman Gate, Barney Ronay for The Guardian wrote one of the funniest pieces I think I've read in years, reacting to
Fortis verse,
yes, reacting to the shit show that was 2 days out before the first game.
Yeah, I agree. That is a masterpiece. Go and read it. It's hilarious.
One more thing coming up, but first a message from Remitly. The Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast are proudly partnered with Remitly. We all cheer for every cover drive, every Yorker, every run saved, but every cheer from the stands or from our screens thousands of miles away is more than just support for the team. Every cheer is a cheer for home. What's the team that we play for every single day? That's our family. No matter the distance, they're always with us in every moment of pride, joy, and connection. Maybe that's why millions of people choose Remitly to send money to India. With fast, safe, and affordable transfers and great exchange rates with low fees, more of the money you send reaches the people who matter most. Because wherever we are, home is in every cheer. Ready to give Remitly a try? Download the Remitly app today and enjoy a special offer on your first transfer. Finally, today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're picking our combined 11s for the series. Not something I'm normally that interested in, but when I was thinking about what the combined 11 would be, it was really, really hard to pick, particularly because so many batters had really good series, and you basically got to pick at least 2 bowlers who missed a fair bit of the series in the 11 as well. Butch, do you want to share your 11 first?
Okay. All right. Okay. Can you hear me okay? I've had to do a little microphone swap. So I've got, this will surprise nobody, I've got KL Rahul opening the batting with Ben Duckett.
You love him.
I love him. So KL Rahul and Duckett to open the batting. He narrowly edges it over Jaiswal. I mean, that heading, he kind of got him the nod there, and I think he marginally scored more runs than Jaiswal over the course of the series. So that's him. The middle order is a little bit more tricky, only because one person in particular might have to bat out of position, and that would be Root, Gill, Brook, Stokes. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Rishabh Pant at 7 as the keeper batter. Again, he's sort of nudged slightly out of the position where he was most effective, but he edges it over Jamie Smith. And then I think it's probably the most obvious. There's 2 obvious picks here, and that's Jadeja and Siraj. The order, Jadeja at 8, again slightly out of position, but never worry. And then the 2 bowlers that get in are Josh Tongue at number 11 and Akash Deep at number 9. I mean, 10 for on a flatty at Edgbaston that wins India that match, gets him the edge over Bumrah. Obviously, you've had Cars is up there. Wokes ended up, I think, taking 11 wickets or so. And so that is it. Rahul, Duckett, Root, Gill, Brook, Stokes, Pant, Jadeja, Akashdeep, Mohammed Siraj, Josh Tongue. There is your combined 11. 6 from India, 5 from England.
Phil?
So I'm 7-4 India. I have the same team bar one. So Brook has not made the cut. And I've gone with Root in my middle order as the English player. And I have picked Jaiswal and moved KL Rahul to number 3. Because KL Rahul's batted everywhere and he's a classicist and Mark adores him. So he can bat wherever. So I moved him to 3. But aside from that, my team is the same. And the reason why I went for Jaiswal, which was touch and go, in the 2 games that they won, he played a big hand. He made an 87 and a 30 odd at Edgbaston. He made a second innings 100 and a good one, albeit he, all right, dropped once or twice, but good 100 under pressure and all the rest of it. So in the 2 games that they won, he was to the fore and obviously made the 100 at Leeds as well. He's also unbelievably good fun to watch. So anyway, he makes the cut just. And I went for Root ahead of Brook because when the real business end of the series kicked in, Root really did step up. And also he kind of forgot about me. He was sort of 60 odd not out at Leeds to get them home in the first test match. So he had a hand in that one as well. But it was a tough call between Root and Brook for which one made the cut for me. And obviously I could have picked them both, but I only went for one.
Cool. So I've gone 7-4 as well, but actually quite a different team. So come at me. Ben Duckett is opening with Rahul. Root at 3, Gill at 4, Pant at 5, Jadeja at 6, Stokes 7, and the guy that you guys didn't pick, but I did, is Washington at 8. I just thought he was an absolute nightmare all series. They just couldn't get him out. And then he bowled the spell of the series from a spinner, that 4 for 22 at Lords. I think you just talk about that so much more if India do get over the line there. England were so far on top of that game before that spell. And yeah, with the bat, if you look at his scores, he failed once, 42, 12 not out, 23, 0, 27, 101 not out to save the game at Manchester, 26. And that 53 in the second innings at the Oval, putting on 39 runs with Prachi Krishna at the very end, showing gears that we hadn't seen before from Washington in Test cricket, and a partnership where Prachi Krishna didn't only face 2 balls. That was so important. So Washington gets in my team, and then the 3 seamers. Maybe I've been quite dull here, but I've obviously picked Siraj. And then,
what number have you got? What number have you got Washington coming in at there?
8, which is where he was at the Oval.
Okay.
And then my 3 seamers are, alongside Stokes, Siraj, Archer. I know he only played 2 test matches, and Bumrah. Bumrah, despite not winning a test ball, still very, very good in the games that he did play. So healthy disagreement. Good to see.
So Akash Deep's perhaps a slightly odd one, or a contentious one, but took a 10 for him in the game that they won, and helped as part of that triumph that got it done at the Oval. So in the 2 games that they've won, he's played a really big hand. So he just made the cut. The tongue question's a tricky one because he's a bit wild, but if you clip up his good moments, then I think he's probably the standout seamer that England have put on the park, really.
Apart from Stokes.
Apart from Stokes,
who was the best.
Yeah. I actually was 7 runs away from including Atkinson. I thought Atkinson was amazing, and if he got England over the line, even with 1 appearance, he was in for me. But he saved England in that first innings. He was the only guy to really stand up.
Yeah, for sure. But over the course, I mean, I think it's quite difficult to include somebody who's played 1 game in a 5-match series. But then, that's just me.
And finally, the 100 podcast tweets. Unless Jamie Smith or Ollie Pope fancies a game tomorrow, brackets unlikely, London Spirit are currently without a recognised keeper for tomorrow's 100 opener versus the Oval Invincibles, asking the big questions. Yes, the 100 starts tomorrow. And I'm going to be really honest with both of you. I'm actually really looking forward to some low-stakes cricket. obviously there is bollocks around the 100, but it's a different sort of bollocks to the bollocks that we've had over the last 7 weeks. And I'm looking forward to just watching cricket and just
and not caring, having no investment. That's what you're saying? Your big endorsement for the 100 is to say you don't give a shit.
Yeah,
and that's what makes it good.
I came up with a phrase yesterday. Obviously, the slogan for the 100 is that every ball counts, but I'm not sure that every ball matters. Every ball matters in the test stuff. I think that's the difference for me.
Oh dear. Well, I'm off. Where am I going? I'm off to Manchester Wednesday, Edgbaston Friday, Oval Saturday, Trent Bridge Sunday. So it will certainly matter to me.
Always on brand, Mark.
Well, I'm off for a bit, so that's me. I'm disappearing. I'm going far
well,
away. I'm going off the grid. I'm going off the grid.
What are we going to do?
How?
To be honest, I don't really give a shit.
He doesn't care.
I don't really give a shit.
Nothing really matters. There we go.
I'm going far, far away, turning my phone off, not following any cricket for a bit. Anyway,
we've gone all Metallica at the end of the. At the end of the pod.
I think we should leave it there. Cheers, Phil. Cheers, Butch, and thank you so much, listeners, for joining us across the series. It's been good fun. We won't be going anywhere because we're going to be back every week. Because we always come back every week. We never stop. We're actually going to be picking a 21st century test 11 of the century at some point during August. We're going to be doing some deep dives around the big questions in English domestic cricket that we haven't properly addressed over the last 7 weeks. So still lots and lots of meaty stuff for you to get stuck into. So thanks to everyone, including Kia, who have proudly sponsored the podcast over the last 7 weeks. We hope that you feel these partnerships have given you the opportunity to get closer to the action this season. That is everything for today. Catch you next time.